Well, good morning. This is the research vessel Falkor, operated by the Schmidt Ocean Institute, operating in the Gulf of California today. This is Expedition FK 210922, interdisciplinary study of hydrothermal venting in the South Pescadero Basin of the Gulf of California. My name is David Caress. I'm the chief scientist here on leg 2 of this expedition. And today we are once again diving in the South Pescadero Basin to a depth of about 3,700 meters. ROV is currently at a depth of 2,540 meters, 2,540 meters. And going down at about 25 to 29 meters per minute. So we shall be on the bottom in the not terribly distant future. This is actually the last dive in the South Pescadero Basin for leg 2 of this expedition. Leg 2 is focused primarily on heat flow measurements, studying the hydrothermal vents at the 2 vent fields that we're aware of in the South Pescadero Basin. And as we're coming in, we've got a jelly, so we'll pause on that. J-Rod is driving at the moment, and he's found a jelly, and I don't know that jelly. What jelly is that? Well, it's pretty. Yeah. Well, a little early in the morning, so a little more video on that. About how large is that, J-Rod?
I would say about 5 centimeters.
So only about 5 centimeters across, and it's the quality of the camera that lets us see it in great detail. Yeah, we're getting a little bit of hits of the lasers. Of course, the ROV is equipped with parallel laser beams that are 10 centimeters across. But now it's time to catch up with the tether. All the time that we paused looking at the jelly, the ROV tether continued to pay out at a constant speed. So we can pause for a short while, but then J-Rod has to pick up the pace and go catch up to the tether that's continuing to feed out of the ship. So we don't actually lose any time in our descents when we make these short interruptions to look at interesting animals. So again, we're doing heat flow, and that's the entire purpose of this dive, this last dive that we have for that purpose. We will drop in to the area of the JaichMaa hydrothermal vent field. All but one of our dives has been in working in that field. Yesterday's dive was at the more northerly Auka vent field, but today we're back at JaichMaa, and we're going to start to the south of the vent field, about 400 meters south of the largest edifice, and you can see in the view that some of the bathymetry showing the edifices that make up this vent field. You can see that they occur in more or less a line. It's a north-south line. The larger edifices are about 40 to 50 meters across and about 20 meters high. I think the tallest of these edifices is 23 to 25 meters, depending on which side you measure it against. The width of these edifices is really a pile of talus, of carbonate blocks that have fallen away from the central part that's building up. And so we're going to start about 400 meters to the south and work our way up into the area of the vents running along the east side. We're choosing the east side because that seems to be the higher heat flow area, or the area with higher heat flow, at least on the north side. And so we're trying to, by going far to the south and working our way up, we're trying to define the larger pattern of heat flow that reflects the structure and the processes that are happening at depth in association with this venting. As we've described in each of the dives over the last few days, what is happening here in the South Pescadero Basin and in a large scale is that we're at a point where the opening of the Gulf of California as a consequence of plate tectonics, of the consequence of the Baja California microplate moving away from North America obliquely. That opening has rifted apart, torn apart the continental crust and opened up into a set of on-echelon deep basins extending from Guaymas, kind of in the middle of the Gulf of California, from Guaymas down to Carmen Basin, down to Farallon Basin, down to North Pescadero Basin, down to South Pescadero Basin where we are, and then further south to the Alarcon Basin. In each of these basins, the rifting has developed to a point where either seafloor spreading has initiated or is about to initiate. In the case of the Alarcon Basin, seafloor spreading has been extant for a significant period of time and has produced a wide swath of normal oceanic crust. Here in the South Pescadero Basin, we think it's right about that point in time where new oceanic crust is being created, but it's being created below the basin floor, and the basin floor is sedimented. And that's because the South Pescadero Basin is adjacent to the Mexico mainland, which provides a very significant source of sediment. And so the volcanism associated with the seafloor spreading, or perhaps the very tail end of rift-related volcanism, that volcanism is being expressed as intrusions within the sediments rather than eruptions on the surface. And those intrusions, when they happen, you're emplacing magma or lava as it's emplaced, and it's hot, and it has to cool, and it does cool. And one of the consequences of the cooling of that lava is heating up pore fluids, water, groundwater, that's above that intrusion. And as the water heats up, it becomes buoyant, and it will begin to rise towards the surface. And this process sets in motion a hydrologic cycle, a hydrothermal cycle, in which fluids are drawn down through regions of high permeability to the vicinity of the intrusion, and then heated up. They interact with the rocks, and then they move. Those fluids are buoyant, so they move upward. And in the case of these vents, those fluids actually vent out of the seafloor into the ocean. That's in a large scale the process that we're studying here. And the bathymetry you're seeing there is showing you a view of the Gulf of California. And the top layer that you see there is multi-beam bathymetry that has been collected by RV Falkor in our prior expedition in 2018, and during most of it actually during this expedition here in 2021. And that was actually the largest activity during leg one of, so John has just highlighted how much we've collected during this expedition. And most of that was done during leg one, led by Ron Spells of UABC, the university in Ensenada, Mexico. Ensenada, Baja California, Mexico. And so the 3 legs for this expedition. Again, the first one was really looking at the large-scale tectonics, and doing so primarily using the shipboard multi-beam, which is a state-of-the-art system. And you can see there's a fair bit of older multi-beam that's around, that exists and has covered much of the seafloor. But the Falkor system is so improved relative to prior generations of multi-beam sonars that even in the places where there are prior surveys, it's worth everyone's while for us to collect current generation data. And indeed, we're able to see features in this multi-beam data looking along the axes of the deep basins that are very interesting and were not visible in the older, lower resolution surveys done going back 20 to 30 years ago in many cases. So as John's moving down in this visualization, we're going past the Carmen Basin and coming up on the Farallon Basin. Well, actually, no, that was the Farallon Basin. We're coming up on the North Pescadero Basin, and then ahead of us is the South Pescadero Basin. And you can see a bit of a marker there that's showing where the ROV is right now on the south side of the South Pescadero Basin. Currently, it's about 2,840 meters depth, and we're again descending to about 3,700 meters depth. So as noted in the chat, I've talked about leg one, I've talked about leg two. Leg three is going to be focused on the biology, the ecology, and the microbiology of the communities that make a chemosynthetic sort of living at these hydrothermal vent fields. And so tomorrow, tonight we will be transiting, and tomorrow afternoon we will be going into La Paz. That will be the end of leg two. 5 of the 7 members of this science party, including myself, will get off of the ship tomorrow. And then the following day, a new science party will join the ship, 6 new people, led by Victoria Orphan of Caltech, Shauna Goffredi of Occidental College, and Greg Rouse of the Scripps Institution of Oceanography, and their colleagues will join the ship. And then I think the day after that, they will set sail and come right back here to the South Pescadero Basin, and they will be diving on both of these vent fields, both JaichMaa, Ja'ag, and Auka. And their dives will be focused right around the edifices and the areas of diffuse venting around those edifices. Again, they will be studying the larger animals, the megafauna. They'll be studying the bacterial mats, the microbial mats that are seen in many areas where venting occurs. They'll be studying the microbial organisms that live in the sediments in and around the vents. And they will be studying this both on an individual species basis, collecting animals that are not yet known to science, and they will be studying the broad ecology and the interconnected processes between all these animals that live together in these vent communities. So if you like biology, I recommend that you tune in to the leg 3 dives that will be coming up in just a few days. So there was Lisa commented or asked if this is not the last expedition for research vessel Falkor, and to my understanding, that is correct. FK 210922 is the last scheduled expedition for RV Falkor, and as she notes, there is a new ship that's already being converted at a shipyard in Spain. I don't know the schedule for sure. Things are actually evolving pretty rapidly in Schmidt Ocean Institute's plans as they're executing their transition to a new ship. But I think the likely scenario is that following this expedition, the Falkor is going to make its way through the Panama Canal and across the Atlantic to Spain, and the crew and the pilots and the broader SOI organization will then get into the task of creating a new research vessel by outfitting the ship that they've purchased, and moving equipment and so forth from the Falkor over to the new ship. The new ship is larger. It has a much more robust dynamic positioning capability. It will be a much better platform for ROV operations, be able to operate in more severe weather. It has a lot more capability for fielding other platforms, so it will be a much better ship to try and do combined AUV and ROV operations off of it. Just broadly speaking, it is going to be a much more capable vessel for the kind of operations that SOI is expecting to enable in the future. And of course, the model for all of this is that the Schmidt Ocean Institute operates this ship, and they put out calls for proposals to do science. And they will generally indicate what part of the world they're likely to be working in a particular time frame. But anyone in the scientific community, anywhere, can submit proposals to these calls from the Schmidt Ocean Institute. Those proposals are reviewed as science proposals are, with assistance from expert reviewers, and they're ranked, and the most highly ranked ones that fit into the logistics of the overall plans, then those teams are offered to be scheduled. That's how we get onto this ship. And it's a tremendous capability, a tremendous service that SOI provides to really the global oceanographic community, supporting all kinds of oceanographic research, and in many cases supporting expensive and forward-looking technology development. So we're now passing 3,000 meters. So we will be coming on to bottom in the not very distant future. All right. Well, let me tell you a little bit about two things. Let's start with what's happening tomorrow. As I indicated, tomorrow we are transiting into La Paz, and I will be getting off the ship, as will several other people. However, when we get on deck with the ROV, and we have here a Polykey Worm doing its Polykey Worm thing. And J-Rod's keeping that in view for us. I don't know. Okay. What, you've been looking at our webpage? I haven't. Awesome. Well, as Dr. Z has just noted to me, he's in the room too. If you go to the website of the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute, which is my institution, there is a posting from September 28th, so it's 2 or 3 weeks old, but it talks about some research led by Kakani Katiha, one of the principal engineers at Mbari, and her team, looking at the way that worms, like the Polykey worm you just looked at, how they actually move. How they swim. You just watch them swim, and so if you're interested in that, you can look at our webpage and read a little bit about how Kakani is and her group is. Yep. How they're using. Optical scanning methods to and 3D camera to image and understand the mechanics of the locomotion of these kind of animals. Going back to what we're going to be doing tomorrow morning. So as we transit in, we are going to be doing a short ROV dive tomorrow. And this is to support the research of Ron Spells, who was chief scientist of Leg 1. Ron and his students at UABC are studying the rifting processes that have created the Gulf of California. And he's working on, he and his students are working on the rifting that's leading to seafloor spreading in the deep basins, the rifting that's going on now, but they're also really interested in the nature and history of the earlier rifting that has left behind the very complicated topographic structure that's present on the east side, just offshore of the east side of the Baja Peninsula, which is very rugged, and there are many isolated blocks. And in terms of the stratigraphy, if you look at those, it's very clear that they're tilted, they're rotated, they're deformed. And Ron and his students have hypothesized that the style of faulting that created that topography was dominated by what's called low angle normal faulting, which is where you start out with a fault that's, you're ripping it apart, but as that fault develops, it winds up having a slip plane that winds up close to horizontal. And it's a means by which one can extend the crust greatly over large distances. And what we are going to do tomorrow morning is go to one of these blocks, to the steep scarp on the east side of one of these blocks, and start about midway up that scarp and try and sample some rocks that would be relevant to the research of Ron and his students. They have hypotheses about what kind of rocks and what kind of deformation those rocks should have undergone. Best way to work on that is to go out and actually get some rock samples. And it's tough to just walk out there with a rock hammer and get samples. You need something like an ROV. Traditionally, rock sampling in the ocean was done through a process called dredging, which was a very, perhaps not right to say crude process, but a blunt instrument. Okay, so maybe it is crude. But basically a big steel basket with sharp teeth on it that you drag across the seafloor on a really, really strong steel cable. And then you bring that back and see what fell into your basket that you knocked off of the seafloor. And you don't, when you do that, you can get a lot of rocks, but you don't actually know exactly where those rocks came from or the context that they came from. So precision sampling with an ROV, like SuBastian, is very much the best way to do submarine geology, particularly in very complicated areas where the exact location and context of the samples is really an important part of understanding the story. So the heat flow team is starting to come in because they see that we're now at 3,200 meters. And we're dropping in. Looks like we're gonna be coming in just about right on the intended start point, which means as we come on bottom, it's pretty likely that we're gonna go right into a heat flow measurement. So Greg Rouse, a member of the oncoming Leg 3 team, has just put in the chat that the biology team is looking forward to the end of quarantine. And I certainly know how Greg feels, because I had to go through that too. But one of the outstanding things about the Falkor over the past year and a half is that SOI succeeded in continuing operations with this ship, and a very, I think the great majority of the originally planned operations, they succeeded in pulling off. And they did that by adopting really stringent measures in terms of quarantine and testing to ensure the safety of everyone on the ship and everyone that comes on the ship, and to ensure that they could operate continuously. And they have been successful. But that has meant that those of us who have the opportunity to come on the ship do have to go through a quarantine period alone in a hotel room, not leaving that room for several days, in the port where we're going to board the ship. Well, thank you, Lisa.
Absolutely.
I agree. Okay, we've prepping for efficient operations here. The heat flow probe has been turned on, and we are definitely getting set to go. Is there any intent to take a push core at this site, or are we all set on far away push cores?
Yeah, we've got just one to try and push core nearer back here on that.
So not at the start,
Not
but
at the start.
okay. So all we're going to do on the first station is a heat flow.
Yes.
Which way are we going to be moving on this one?
We will be moving northward along one of the subbottom profile lines.
Okay.
So let me attempt. So this is my view of it, that we're coming in there and we're going to run up that red line, which is one of the lines that's on
this
there.
green one right here?
Yes, I think so. So in fact, as we come in, if you want to jog over to be more precisely on that line than the waypoint, that would be great.
Okay.
It's about 10 meters off of it, it looks like.
I'll just put a marker there.
So as we run this northward trending heat flow transect, we're going to be following a subbottom profile line. A subbottom profiler is a sonar that we use to image the subsurface structure. In this case, it's a 1 to 6 kilohertz chirp subbottom profiler that was fielded on an autonomous underwater vehicle, or AUV, and it images the subsurface stratigraphy to a penetration of about 50 meters or so, and that was achieved here for the most part. This is the same AUV, the survey that we used to generate the meter scale bathymetry that we're operating on here in this vent field. The water depth as we drop in should be, well, I'll just check it on the map. We're expecting to be at 3,676 meters, within 3 or 4 meters when we come on bottom. What depth is your favorite depth? That's an interesting question. For me, my work largely revolves around mapping the seafloor at different scales, sometimes from sonars on ships, sometimes from sonars on AUVs, sometimes from sonars on ROVs if we're trying to do centimeter scale work. And for me, the right depth is the depth that the seafloor is at, because that's the part of the ocean I'm concerned with, wherever it is. Well, as we're coming on to bottom, we're going to transition into heat flow operations, and that means I'm going to hand off this chair and microphone to our co-chief scientist, Raquel Negrete Aranda of the Institute CECESE, located in Ensenada, Baja California, Mexico. And Raquel leads a heat flow team with respect to this expedition and the broader project that we've engaged on prior and future expeditions, she's leading a heat flow team that includes Rob Harris of Oregon State and several of her colleagues there at SuSaSe, including Florian Newman, who has been manning the equipment here in the control room on all of these dives for all of these measurements.
That was great, thank you. And you're really improving how to pronounce Spanish words by name and last name and
Oh, okay.
lingua
Well,
as well.
that's thank you. That's very unconscious, but it is a goal of mine. I had started taking Spanish classes and this was a couple years ago because I just realized I really need to be able to speak it. And what I discovered was I am at my late 50s. I am no longer capable of doing college classes. I can't deal with it. I am a poor student now. So we're having a conversation with Raquel, who is getting things all set there for the upcoming arduous dive.
Yeah, I'm just preparing the start here.
Yes, that's right. So, hey, just to give you a sense of how this works nowadays, normally you come out on trips like this on the Falkor. In the past, we've been able to carry a science crew of something like 14 people. But the necessity to maintain several cabins on the ship empty to be used as isolation spaces in case COVID does make its way onto the ship has meant that we've all had to operate with reduced science parties. So we only have 7 members of a science party on this leg instead of 14. And on the next leg, they'll have 1 more, they'll have 8, but that's the maximum allowed. And so a large part of our team is not on the ship. And we really have become dependent, not just with the Falkor, but at Mbari as well on all of our expeditions. We have small science parties, and we're using technology to do telepresence in various forms. That clearly SOI has been doing telepresence greatly in terms of the live streaming of these dives for several years. But it's at Mbari, it's a new thing to be using it not for outreach, but for extending the science party on shore in a big way. We've done it to a certain extent in the past, but now we're really depending on it. And we're depending on that, and we have been depending on that in this trip as well, such that the heat flow team, Florian is here in the control room, and he is operating in conjunction with the pilots. He's operating the probe and running the software that logs the data, but immediately he is then passing that data over the network to Rob Harris, who's in Colorado. And Rob is doing the initial processing of the data and passing back the values. So every time we tell you, oh, the heat flow measured there was 2.3 watts per meter squared, which is higher than it was on the prior measurement, we tell you something like that, Florian, the pilots turned the thing on, Florian ran the software that logged the data and managed the timing of all of that. The pilots had inserted the probe when Florian told them to. They pulled it out when he told them to. And then those data went to Rob, who processed them, and then those results come back to us. They get posted to you, they get posted to everybody. And we all, particularly Raquel and Florian together, make decisions about what to do next. But it intrinsically involves the folks on shore, not just Rob, but several other people that are would normally be on the ship as part of our team. Okay, we're at 3540. And we have an altitude of 60 meters, so we are in fact coming in onto the seafloor.
No, it's not yet. It's no altitude yet.
Oh, that's,
It's a delta.
yeah, sorry. So we don't have altitude, no.
We will be getting it short.
Yeah.
Should-
Yeah, I'd require at least 2 weeks of being in the control room continuously before I could figure out which part of the mini displays to look at reliably. My mistake was I looked in the general direction of the altitude readout. There wasn't anything there. My eye was drawn to the winch data, which is below. And irrelevant to the question of where we are relative to the bottom, except in the sense that the winch is paying out the tether, which is what allows us to be near the bottom.
Which is very relative.
So there was a comment, would be great if Mimbari live stream dives to the public on YouTube. Mimbari is very committed to outreach activities. The approach that we are taking, and it's one that's evolving pretty rapidly, is that we're not choosing to routinely live stream dives, and instead our outreach and education team is developing specific events. So there will be points in time where particular dives are highlighted, and the live feed from the ship and the ROV is one component of a larger program. And this is being done in conjunction with the Monterey Bay Aquarium. Now, of course, we are the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute. We are actually separate from the Monterey Bay Aquarium. We're a separate organization. We have close ties, but we're separate. In the context of the education outreach, we partner with them closely, and we've done a couple of these events over the last few months, and I think the intent within the Institute is to do that more often. But it's not going to be exactly the same approach that is done with SOI or with the Ocean Exploration Trust and RV Nautilus or the Okeanos operated by NOAA. Again, Mimbari will be trying to develop discrete events that are built around ROV dives, but bring in broader educational resources. Okay, well, I am going to be handing this off to Raquel. And we are going to commence on some heat flow. And this time we really do have bottom in the altimeter, and we're 60 meters off. And we are coming right on to the desired location for the first heat flow measurement.
Hi, Ben. Hold on. Okay, so there's the bottom, guys. Welcome. Thank you for joining us once more. And thank you to Dr. Carres that was doing a great narration during the descent. And so as he already explained you, what's the target of the day. It's great to see everybody coming into the chat and to see Lisa and Jeff and James, all the usuals, and of course the new people that is adding to the chat as well. So as we arrive into the bottom, we are ready to go to make our first heat flow measurement. So welcome back. Let me know if you have any questions. I'll be explaining a little bit of what we've been finding so far and how we're interpreting the data and how important it is or why it is important to finish up this transect. So, hey Rachel. So it's always a pleasure to have company through the chat, and I hope that you enjoy this dive with us.
We didn't get soft enough here to help with this good.
Likely this.
Somebody's asking if you have an idea of why it looks so different from 2018.
So these hydrothermal features are really very dynamic. Sometimes we see chimneys build up meters between a dive one day and the next. But then the chimney like Diane's vent, which we saw yesterday, really hasn't changed. So you've got fluid flow flowing through little cracks and things, and if it seals up one crack, it tries to find another place to come out, and if it suddenly makes a new opening in the surface, it can just start growing new chimneys. What we saw at the JaichMaa Jaag field is that when we were there in 2018, there was a fair amount of hydrothermal activity, but there was really only one big active chimney. When we went back, things had changed to where there was lots more venting. Maybe there was a slight earthquake that cracked things, maybe the flow path just changed, or we do know that these mounds, they're often surrounded by rubble, so they get built up and they get gravitationally unstable and collapse, and so maybe just a little landslide off the side of the mound there provided new flow paths. So, you know, we see these things. We're lucky to have been here in four different years to see this, and so often we don't know how fast they change because we only see them once every few years at best.
Thank you, Dr. C, for answering that question. And so now, guys, as you can see, we're having probe. The sediment seems to be more soft around here. And so, but the first part of the measurement, as you can see on the graph, it's going on well. All 5 thermistors are in, and so let's see how up it goes in this place. It's interesting place to start this dive. I know. That's what I was.
We might have to jump south before we go north,
Yeah, well, yeah.
because that's pretty high.
Yeah, it's not very good.
So, if we were decided to go south instead of north, I know we were going to go north, but we may change our mind. How much time do we need to get the ship moved?
I'll start south.
We'd probably go, what, do you think 100 meters would go if we jump south?
Yeah,
Because we have to think about moving the ship before we do that. That's why I'm jumping in here.
Okay.
Yeah, it's about 100 meters south.
Okay.
We haven't decided yet. That's what Cal's called it. I just want to say that.
Yeah, I just want to discuss it with
Yeah.
Rob and everybody.
But we didn't have to wait too long to make that move. Okay. Yeah, so we could make that move pretty easily if you want to.
Okay, thank you. Oh, that's good.
Where are they?
Okay, yeah. So, let's move south. 100 meters. Please.
What's the?
Yeah, not now.
I understand.
No, but he prepares.
Yeah,
right
it needs to make the waypoint.
Yeah.
Although we're sort of approaching a little scarp there. Maybe we don't want to get too close to it to complicate things. Yeah, 100 meters puts it almost
Right,
on
but-
that green scarp.
Let's see where.
Yeah.
Let's
If
see
we're
where he
over
puts
there,
it.
Yeah,
Okay, so you want to move it
A little bit to the east.
to perhaps
I would move it
15 or
20
20 meters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go about 15 or 20 meters east.
East, okay.
Yeah, we want to pretty quite underline, but we don't want to be next to that little scarp. We might confuse things.
20 over.
That looks good to me. Look good to you, Raquel?
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Thank you.
Okay.
Good points. Thanks.
That's good.
Okay, let's get the probe out of the seabed, please.
Roger.
Brilliant, ROV. Brilliant, ROV.
ROV bridge.
Yeah, we have a new waypoint for you.
Updated waypoint. Thank you.
Thank you. That's it. Thank you.
Yeah, we're ready. Okay, guys, as you saw, we didn't do the full measurement here because it was a little bit higher than we expected. So we're gonna just further south another 100 meters to confirm that this is the value around here, and then we're just gonna jump back to this station and then just passing by and continue up north later on. Buenos días. Mientras estamos en el tránsito, me dirijo a los que hablan español y que nos acompañan por ahí, para que no se sientan muy abandonados con la narración en inglés solamente. Entonces, si tienen preguntas, me las pueden hacer en español y haremos lo posible por contestárselas. Ok, entonces bienvenidos a este último buceo, donde estaremos una vez más haciendo transectos de flujo de calor. En esta ocasión lo vamos a hacer norte-sur y estamos empezando por el lado sur del transecto para unirnos con lo que habíamos hecho en días pasados. Y de hecho la primera medición que hicimos está arrojando datos interesantes. Entonces vamos a ver qué pasa. Quédense por ahí, no se vayan. Oh, nice.
JaichMaa?
You know, they have invited me several times, but uh, the word is too cold, and you have to put like a big wetsuit, and then yeah. So no, I used to scuba dive when we lived for a couple of years in Cozumel in the Caribbean.
Bridge, ROV.
RV Bridge.
Yeah, we're gonna come a little bit further south.
Further south, okay. Great, thanks.
You there? Okay. We're there. Okay, guys, so we are 100 meters south from the last station. And as I was saying, well, the heat flow was a little bit higher than expected. Sorry. And so we decided to go further south to see if this tendency is prevail, or if we are far enough from the bent field, so we are already reaching what is known as the background heat flow value, which is in this area should be around 2 watts per square meter. So, and this is only an inference from a different study that we did back in 2018 in the Auca field. But
RV Bridge, would you like me to, I'll stop on that waypoint?
Yeah, we'll stop here. We're not sure if we're gonna go back north or continue south, so let's just hold it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's get the probe in, please. Roger.
so you look at the squid image, then the probe has been inserted, and here we're pretty safe since we are in soft sediments, though we are kind of close to scarp. Did it went all the way through?